Hey everybody, you are in our first session of the day, ArcGIS Enterprise Hosted and Managed Cloud Strategies by Wendy Peloquin. We're about to get started here in just a second. It's 10:45, so we're going to wait a few more seconds, make sure that Wendy is all ready. Thanks for joining, guys. All right, Wendy is ready. I'm gonna start handing over the reins to her, and looking forward to seeing your presentation.
Good morning. I thought I was ready, but I think I am having an issue sharing my screen.
Okay, Wendy, your
Yep,
presenter, if you're muted, go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Are you able to hear me now? Good morning, this is Wendy. Can you hear me? Good morning, this is Wendy. Can you hear me? Good morning, this is Wendy. Are y'all able to hear me? You could type in the chat. I think I might be having some audio issues. Good morning, can you hear me? Okay, is everybody able to see my screen? Sorry about that, having a few technical difficulties this morning. So let me just confirm, and then I will get started. And thank you for your patience, everybody. Okay, one more second. Okay, sorry everybody. My name is Wendy Peloquin. I am an account executive at GIS Inc. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about strategies for cloud migrations for migrating your ArcGIS enterprise into the cloud. So a little bit about GIS Inc. We have been serving the ESRI community for over 29 years. And as a premier GIS services firm, we offer thought leadership training and services across all sectors in every industry. So real quick, why listen to us? So at GIS Inc, we have a deep understanding of the ESRI platform and a strong relationship with ESRI. We have ongoing conversations with many of the teams at ESRI to help them build out their new offerings, and we align our work with best practices and have proven to take GIS into many sectors and produce a multitude of new solutions. A major component of that success is being release ready. So this puts the responsibility on us at GIS Inc. to know ESRI's products from top to bottom. This means working in the early adopter programs, participating in alpha and beta testing, and providing them feedback. And so we bring the real world needs to these beta programs so that when the products do hit the market, we can stand beside ESRI as an expert. So when any new version is out, we at GIS Inc. are ready to help our clients implement it immediately. And then another thing is ESRI does have specialty designations, and these further exemplify our expertise within specific technologies. So very similar to GIS Inc. becoming release ready, we're also have obtained most of the specialty designations from ESRI, but the one specific and important today is we were the first platinum partner to obtain it for cloud services. So we do have skills and expertise on hand that have been deploying the ArcGIS platform into the cloud for a while. So today there are a few things that I'm going to go over. The first is what you need to know. The second, what benefits you will receive migrating to the cloud. And then finally, what you need to get started. So starting off, what you need to know about the cloud. So over the years, we've come to expect a lot from the cloud providers, thinking them as more of just, kind of that traditional virtual environment and storage capabilities that we would expect from the on-premise environment. But there's really a whole lot more that goes into it of being the cloud. There's a lot more capabilities from being able to have automatic updates. The performance is very agile. It is very easy to expand and optimize, as well as the cost. A lot of organizations are experiencing cost savings migrating into the cloud. And then finally, security. One of those big pieces is that while the cloud providers are maintaining security of the cloud itself, it's kind of that shared security model where then you're providing the security for the infrastructure that you partition out. So we've really kind of seen a trend of deployments ramp up over the years at GIS Inc. So you can see in this chart how it's expanded for the organizations that we've been working with at GIS Inc. across different state and local commercial and airports. But really, you can see there is a huge jump in 2020. One of the big jumps in 2020 that contributed it was COVID, and a lot of organizations now having workforces that were working from home and needing more flexible environments to be able to have access and to continue working. But of course, you can see that over the years, it has still been growing. So from 2018 to 2019, there has been solid growth across, the industries. And then, of course, one of the big things to look at here is, just there's a lot of different options and adding more organizations that are beginning to provide the cloud offerings. So really, as more providers are coming out, as you can see in the second graphic from 2016 to 2017, and then the previous one before that, there are a few more that have responded that, really one of the great benefits is that prices are going down with more options. So as you're considering the cloud, definitely consider the fact that there are many providers that are out there. So the big question is really when to use the cloud. So some of the times it's when your organization is going cloud first. There are a lot of organizations out there that it is an initiative to move everything into the cloud. A lot of organizations enjoy being early adopters, but really kind of that cloud first. There's a lot of buzzwords going around about the cloud, that it's cheap, secure, simple. So in most cases, this is true, but one of the things definitely want to stress is that it takes careful planning moving to the cloud, and there's definitely a risk if it is not deployed correctly. Another reason is there's a lot of organizations have a large amount of data and processing needs, so they're able to utilize the cloud for that processing and storage environment. Of course, as integrating with IoT and other business systems, the cloud provides a flexible architecture and environment to be able to connect to those other systems. Sometimes it's even used as really just an offsite backup. So being able to have a backup of the on-premise environment, be able to spin it up very quickly and use it as a production in the case of emergencies. And finally, kind of another piece, IT may be reluctant to change that. You may have aging or older infrastructure that needs to be replaced. And so some departments and organizations are taking that to move to the cloud because they don't have what they need on premise to support adopting, different aspects of the ESRI platform. Another is, really kind of access, as I mentioned, to that modern hardware and scalable system. So being able to spin up a testing environment as it's needed, and then be able to, only pay for that testing environment when you're using it, and then spin it back down and have it there when you're ready. And then some organizations are moving to the cloud because the organization's been breached. So I know over the past year, there's been a lot of local governments that have had security breaches and even had their data held hostage and had to pay fees to access it or get to it. And so the cloud provides that flexible and secure environment that for some organizations, I know one that we've worked with at GIS Inc, their data was actually protected and they didn't have any issues with that. So really kind of moving on to cloud security, there are a lot of myths out there about how secure the cloud environment is. And so, really kind of with this notion that data is stored on servers and systems that you don't own and control, there's a lot of people that want to, be able to touch it to prove that it's secure. But actually, the cloud environment can be more secure than a lot of the on-premise environments. One of the big things is that there's strong perimeters and surveillance. So these data centers have high fences, barbed wire, guards patrolling the area. Another is controlled access. People aren't able to get in. Employees and vendors and visitors are physically separated sometimes from the critical data. Another thing is that access is not only access not only to the best data centers, but you're also going to have highly skilled IT professional teams. So in these cloud environments, they do dedicate a lot of time and resources and expertise in cybersecurity to make sure that they are secure. And then, of course, there's thorough and frequent auditing. So there are regular audits performed against these systems to protect against flaws and make sure that, there aren't going to be any security issues. And I think, just kind of proving the point of some of the secure areas, I think a lot of us have gone into server rooms or network rooms, and, there's kind of a little bit of a disaster, or anybody's able to have access to that. And so really when it comes to security, there are several different offerings. So cloud providers, they allow organizations by having these extra security offerings to really focus on the mission and minimize distractions. So there's actually 6 levels of security out there, other discussion, but really you can get up to level 5 security with designated regions that are physically separated and architected to meet the US DoD security requirements for cloud computing. There are also cloud environments out there that also meet HIPAA requirements as well. And so one of the things is really kind of when I talked about that shared responsibility and security, so that, the physical location of the data centers that is, being maintained, the environment itself, the cloud environment is being secured by the providers. And then, of course, you're going through and, going to be providing additional security as well on the platform itself, and having security for who's able to access that data. So really, you know, it's getting to the point where the physical location of the data is mattering less and less, and it's really the means of access and security around who has access to that environment that is becoming the bigger concern today. So moving forward with the deployment, I think a lot of us are all familiar with the base deployment of ArcGIS Enterprise. And there's really varying degrees on how this can be deployed. ArcGIS Enterprise has really evolved over the years to, you know, really have an efficient use of the platform, so organizations can combine or aggregate components depending on the workflows. And if you deploy any of the server roles that ESRI has available, you're going to need to consider its environment and what components are needed and how that's going to play into your cloud environment as well. And then another thing, you know, really to be aware of that a lot of organizations don't consider is where your ArcGIS desktop is going to sit, as well as the data. So desktop can sit and run in the cloud, which means, you know, between the desktop pro environment, database, enterprise itself, it can all be in the cloud. And, you know, we really saw a big jump to organizations moving to that model when COVID hit earlier in 2020 to allow them to have their staff members work from home and have an ease in access. But one of the things we really want to stress about deploying to the cloud is, you know, organizations that want to keep their desktop on premise and put their data in the cloud, we want to be very clear that that is not a best practice and should not be done. You should never separate your data in your desktop from your environment. There's a lot of efficiency to be lost. You know, there's going to be latency, response times are going to be an issue, and so it's just not naturally a good practice to follow that model. So make sure that your desktop and your data is in that same environment as the rest of the ESRI platform. So there are a few things to consider when it comes to the deployment pattern and the migration strategy. So really kind of start thinking about these steps. Like the first is evaluate. What are you trying to achieve? What is driving your organization to consider and move to the cloud? The other piece is to document. Document all of your workflows. Document your existing environment, where your data lies. You know, cannot stress how much the documentation is going to be key here. The third is to architect a new system. And a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about different ways the cloud deployment can be architected, but talk to experts, talk to those who are familiar with deploying the platform and the technology that you're using in the cloud. And of course, educate. Educate your team members, educate your organization on the benefits. And that's really something that should be done from the very beginning and along the way. And then finally, you're going to deploy the cloud pattern to the best practices, really based on what's architected back in step 3. And then the final step is going to be to migrate into your cloud environment. And we'll go through each of those different scenarios in a few minutes. So what benefits will you receive for migrating into the cloud? You know, with on-premise, there's always that initial cost of hardware. Sometimes you have to perform network enhancements, but with the cloud, you're not going to have to purchase any hardware itself. It has a flexible pay-as-you-go model, so you're only paying for what you need. That's really included in that subscription pricing. And so when with on-premise hardware, when that needs to be upgraded or it hits capacity, sometimes there's a lot more expenses as well as time just to add on to your existing environment. Where in the cloud, it's very easy to add resources to your different servers or to add to it instantaneously without having to wait to physically have something get set up. So there are a lot of different expenses to look at there where you can potentially realize some cost savings with migrating into the cloud. The other thing to consider in the deployment is the why and the when. Do you have available resources? Are there rules and regulations on where your data resides that the cloud environment may not meet those requirements? Or do you have third-party interactions with GIS that, based on those integrations, if you move your data to the cloud, it may cause or break that integration, or are those third-party systems going to move as well? So really, consider the cloud deployment against the on-premise deployment, but also realize that you can have a hybrid deployment, and you can have a on-premise and a cloud, whether that's doing a replication or publication up to the cloud, or really using it for failover or disaster recovery. So it's not just a one size fits all, and you don't have to choose one or the other. You definitely have some options and some flexibility with your deployment. And as I kind of mentioned before, the other big thing to consider is what's going to happen to your desktop. So with a lot of the cloud environments, you are going to have cloud workspaces. Some of those are like the Amazon AppStream or Workspace. You can also set up servers to act as desktop environments in the cloud. Some are going to be providing access through that thin client VPN. But the thing to remember is that no matter how you set up your desktop editing in the cloud, just make sure that it is built to the specs. If you are utilizing Pro opposed to desktop, just make sure that it is going to allow you to utilize that. And then of course, some of the flexible payment options that's really cool with the cloud is that you can provision whether it's the server, the app stream, or workspaces, and use it on demand. So you're only paying for when you're using it and that it's up and running, and then at night you can turn it off, and that can help lower the cost. But one of the things that ESRI is moving towards is, of course, editing those feature services, like with the parcel fabric and the utility network, but it's not quite there yet for the other multi-user editing environments. So definitely consider the different options for desktop when getting ready to deploy to the cloud. And then of course, one of the benefits is really that modernized architecture. There's a lot of cloud-ready applications such as ArcGIS Enterprise. Even like the cloud optimized, that's what ArcGIS Online would be considered. And then of course, just start small. One of the biggest flexibilities about this architecture is that you can start if your organization needs a single server deployment and build out as you grow and you need additional resources. And you can really kind of monitor that and make those decisions, and you can scale up, adding resources to the existing servers, or you can scale out and adding additional servers. So if you have a standard based deployment of 4 to 5 servers and you want to add geo event, you can easily scale out and add that into your cloud environment. And then of course, another thing to consider is the benefits that you can have with business continuity. So this is really looking at how much downtime can be lost. High availability, what the acceptable downtime is it failover? Are you going to stand by and use another environment to switch over to production if something goes down? Is that going to, that failover environment, is it going to be active, ready to activate to where it goes up immediately, or are you going to have to go and manually do that? And of course, disaster recovery. What happens, with on-premise, or something happens to the data center? And then of course, with each of these, there is going to be a cost associated with that. So looking at your different options, the higher the availability, the quicker the recovery time, it's going to cost you a little bit more. So that will be a consideration for your organization to what you consider to be that acceptable downtime for your workflows. And then of course, this is just an example of a standard cloud deployment with high availability. So you can see that on the top, there's your active production environment set up, and then on the bottom is that passive production. So looking at having the data in different regions, and that, you know, there's a replicated environment and it's just ready to turn on as needed. Another benefit to that is, you know, also when you're doing upgrades and, you know, want to get everything done and tested and then deploy. So what do you need to do to migrate to the cloud? This is kind of a overview of what we consider for implementation. The first is really starting with that readiness set. Looking at your data, looking at your workflows, seeing if your organization is ready to move to the cloud. The next is inventorying your content. One of the great things is, you know, there's a lot of data out there. When it comes to moving to the cloud, you may have data across multiple, whether it's in Portal, ArcGIS Online, different databases. So look at all what's going to need to be migrated, and then develop that strategy for how you're going to migrate. And then of course, plan that implementation, and then implement into the cloud. And, you know, as I mentioned before, education and outreach should really be going on the entire time as you're looking to move into the cloud. And then of course, you know, with the readiness assessment, talk to the stakeholders. You know, really talk to the groups that are utilizing the data. They need to access the data. Look at, you know, the different use cases, the operations, if there are any security requirements across different teams. Looking at the inventory of the data and content itself in there as well. And of course, as moving to the cloud and adopting and making that move from desktop to pro, you know, another thing to assess is, you know, are you going to have some staff members that are utilizing one or the other, or making sure that, you know, what you do deploy into the cloud is going to be ready and able to, you know, be built to the specs of pro, as well as you know, may move from desktop to pro in the future. And as you're looking at that content inventory, really look at, you know, what the different environments are, the databases. Do you have any data automation set up between different systems? Where are the project files located? Where are the desktop editors? Do you have services that are being published that are accessed by other systems? What web maps and apps may be affected? And then of course, any of those third-party integrations. If you move your GIS, is it going to break that integration? Is it going to cause an issue? So those are all the things to inventory when you get to that step to prepare for then your migration strategy. So there are a few different ways that you can migrate into the cloud. The first is that rehost, and that's really what's considered that lift and shift. So you're going to just take your existing environment as it is on premise and replicate that in the cloud. The next is refactor, which is really kind of going in, making some design changes, but there's no application changes itself. You know, you're going to move your enterprise as is, but maybe you might, you know, move your database to another server, but there's going to be, you know, a lot of similarities there. The third is a re-architect, and this is really where you're going to, you know, make changes for cloud optimization and making the application more scalable. Moving to the cloud gives you a lot of flexibility to re-architect your enterprise deployment that, you know, may yield some cost savings as well as some efficiencies across your resources. And then the last is a rebuild, and that's really exactly what it sounds like. You're starting from scratch, starting from the ground all. But one thing to consider, you know, it's really not a one size fits all. But, you know, the components to consider as you're developing that migration strategy and deciding what you're going to do is really, you know, what platform is being migrated, what applications do you have, the data and business integrations are really going to be those components to consider. And then, of course, once you have that migration strategy, the next is to consider that implementation plan. This is the who, the what, the when, the how. As I mentioned at the beginning, the documentation, you can never have too much documentation. Also, you know, talk to the experts, talk to your IT team, find out if there are other groups, other departments that have migrated to the cloud. Talk to ESRI, talk to ESRI's business partners who are used to and deploying into the cloud and have experience there. You know, kind of share the dream, educate your organization on the benefits that they're going to receive, and, you know, even increase efficiencies and workflows. And then, of course, deploy the cloud environment to the best practices for the ESRI deployment patterns, and then migrate. So choose which one of the strategies you're going to use when you migrate into the cloud. And then, of course, there are several tools out there. So with the implementation to build the environment, you know, those tools exist for moving content and data. One of the ones, you know, these are just a few that we have used and seen some success with at GIS Inc. The first, ESRI, has that web GIS DR, and so that kind of creates a disaster recovery backup of your enterprise environment. And then you can take that into the cloud and then restore your environment into that cloud and into the cloud environment up there. So really kind of taking that snapshot disaster recovery backup of your on-prem and then completely replicating that back into the cloud. You know, you can also set up several virtual machine images with software already stored, and then, you know, set up your licenses and configure. There's also several third-party tools. One of the ones we are a big fan with at GIS Inc. is GeoJob. So they have some admin tools which really helps you move your users, your content, your web maps and apps from one environment to the other. And then the last is a custom approach. So sometimes you may want to write a Python script to move content from site to site or build your own tools. And sometimes it's really just manual. It's going to depend on how much content you're going to move from your on-premise to your new cloud environment. But one of the things that we really, you know, like to stress to organizations is this is a time for you to really take advantage and clean up your data and your services and your maps and apps. A lot of organizations have not done this in a long time, or you know, it may have turned into the wild, wild west over the years, but you know, you can save a lot of time and effort and only move over what you need. So, you know, kind of taking that custom approach will allow you to kind of take an inventory and evaluate your data and services and only take what you need moving forward and deprecate what's no longer needed within the organization. And, you know, with the education and outreach, we know that, you know, change can be scary for some people. So, you know, the consistent communication about the changes that are going to occur is going to be very important. That's going to be that ongoing process across the organization and all the teams that are going to be affected with accessing the data, viewing the data. And then, of course, you know, have an advocate. Offer further training. If you're taking advantage of moving to the cloud to also move from desktop to pro, make sure that you know, the organizations have training there. And then, of course, make sure everyone is aware of the ROI and the potential cost savings. A lot of, you know, members of organizations that may be resistant to change may find it more favorable if they're able to understand the impact that it's going to have on the organization and save the organization a lot of money. And then, of course, one final thing to think about here is ArcGIS monitoring. So once you get your new environment set up in the cloud, you're going to want to make sure and monitor it. Some organizations we work with, as we mentioned, with the cloud being really scalable, are implementing kind of a base deployment, monitoring their performance, and then growing and either scaling up or scaling out from there. So there are a lot of different tools available. We have developed a custom solution at GIS Inc, and this is very simple and basic. It's only monitoring a few things such as the CPU, the RAM, the usage, you know, really meant to be a lightweight monitoring tool. by far the most robust, comprehensive tool out there, and really the best solution for the enterprise system is the ESRI ArcGIS Monitor. This is going to give you lots of powerful tools for monitoring your entire enterprise system. And then we're finding some organizations are utilizing third-party monitoring tools. So, sometimes you may not need something as robust as ArcGIS Monitor or as simple as the solution we've built at GIS Inc. So those such as the PRTG offer, a little bit of flexibility. It gives you a little bit in between the two. And if you'd like to, learn a little bit more about the monitoring, we do have a blog post available online. So you can go to gisinc.com/blog and really, dig into it a little bit deeper and see what is, the most practical and affordable solution for your organization. But we do recommend that you do implement a monitoring solution moving into the cloud. And then finally, just kind of wrapping things up here is just, don't fear the cloud. There's lots of options for deploying to the cloud, lots of different capabilities, ways to get flexible about the cost, security itself. So really just as you're going through and taking the time to really evaluate, know that this is a very viable option, and a lot of organizations are having success. And a lot of those myths about security are no longer there or relevant. So definitely, look at it with an open mind and then make the best decision for your organization. And sometimes that may be continuing to keep your ArcGIS platform on premise or moving to a hybrid environment instead of completely moving everything in the cloud. So with that, if you have any questions, I've included my contact information. I did forget to put a link up. We do have an ebook available that you can download for free that really goes into more detail on all of these topics. If you're interested in that ebook, if you can just, you can shoot me an email and I can send you a link to that following the presentation. But thank you everybody for joining me today, and I'm sorry about all the technical difficulties at the beginning, and thank you for bearing through all of that with me.
All right, thanks, Wendy. That was great. I am not seeing any questions at this time, but if anybody has a question, possibly put it in the chat box. I can read it so that everyone can hear it, and Wendy can take her best crack at it. Anybody? Are there any questions that you get asked frequently, Wendy, about the cloud in general?
I think that one of the biggest questions, aside from security, is cost. Azure and AWS have some tools online that allow you, if you wanted to even just look at the cost of your existing infrastructure, you can go in and you can select the server, select the specs of exactly what you already have on premise, and you can get estimated cost. With a lot of the cloud environments, you're able to, if you sign multi-year agreements or pay for some of it up front, even have more cost savings on top of that. So, utilizing those tools is a great way to get some back of the napkin numbers, if you're evaluating what that's going to be. And then the other is really just which one to go to. A lot of the cloud environments, the two most popular that we work with, a lot of our customers, is the Azure AWS. If your local government or your organization already has a Microsoft contract, sometimes you can get some cost savings there to utilize Azure over AWS. They're both very, very similar. But when it comes to the desktop editing, AWS does have a few more flexible options for editing and creating that desktop environment.
Man, good tips. Okay, well, we are 5 minutes, but it doesn't look like we have any more questions at this time. I want to thank you, Wendy. That was great. And I'm looking forward to your other presentations. I believe you have one tomorrow.
Yep, be presenting tomorrow on migrating to the utility network.
Very cool. Okay, well, thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I guess we can kind of end a little early, which is great, so we can all prepare for the next one. I appreciate you very much.
All right, thank you very much.